Now, so far, 2014 has been marked by a series of high-profile events commemorating the centenary of the First World War. Thousands of men lost their lives in a conflict that contemporaries described as the war to end all wars. But it's a subject that's close to the heart of the journalist, author and filmmaker Jai Singh. He's dedicated most of his time to raising awareness of the contribution of India's Sikhs, since it's now exactly 100 years to the day that they first entered the Great War. While Sikhs formed 20% of the British Indian Army, despite making up only 2% of that population. More than 100,000 of them were in service to Britain when the Great War ended, while many thousands lost their lives in service to a country they had never even seen before or been to. They fought in the battlefields of France, Belgium, Turkey and Africa. Well, a number of events have been planned to mark their contribution, including the launch of a campaign to erect a permanent memorial recognising their bravery and service. And I'm delighted to say that Jai Singh now joins me in the studio. Very good morning to you. That's second meeting, in fact. But I mean, it is 100 years ago today that Sikhs entered the First World War. It's a huge event. So what is being planned in the community to commemorate this?
It's absolutely significant, and across Britain there are various localised community events taking place to mark the commemorations with prayers and meetings and talks. Thankfully, my film Indians in the Trenches, you saw a clip of that there, has also been screened and will continue to be screened throughout the commemoration events. But there isn't a national event of significance which really pays homage to these soldiers and tries to inspire a younger generation too, which is why I'm working alongside serving British Armed Forces personnel with creating a memorial to their memory and creating that sort of national event which does do the story justice.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit later, but I mean, I noticed as well that a number of important paintings have been commissioned. I mean, tell us about the artwork.
The artwork itself that we've had an artist, Jaglau, commissioned to do is quite striking. You see there the colours, the imagery. We try to take as many real-life stories or real-life scenarios as possible and try to depict them in new ways to inspire younger people and a newer generation to take an interest. Of course, the war was graphic and quite horrific, so it was quite a challenge to keep that sentiment in mind, as well as be something that got the message across. You see there Sikh soldiers praying in the trenches, maintaining their
vulnerable as well.
faith.
That's the thing which really stands out, and the bravery as well, just carrying individual colleagues to safety.
And what was so phenomenal about these soldiers was that they maintained their religious adherences, their belief. You see the turbans there that they continue to wear even in the trenches. So they were fighting a horrific war, the war to end all wars, as you say, but also maintaining their faith, their identity, their martial traditions. And to the enemy, that was quite scary. That was something that they didn't want to face in battles. There's well-known stories, one in particular of a guy called Gangar Singh who faced off with 12 Germans in a trench, and he was the only one to survive after that skirmish.
12 Germans in
a bayonet fight, indeed, and it's well recognised, and he was awarded the Indian Order of Merit for his actions. But the Germans were very much, the enemy were very much scared of these Indian soldiers, and the fear that they created because of such stories of bravery was remarkable.
And I've seen your film Indians in the Trenches, and what is so astonishing about it is the dignity of these men, because you've actually got actors playing the roles, reading out the letters, etc. But this sense that they were fighting a just cause, and that they felt they weren't afraid of death. They thought it was actually a worthy cause to die for.
Indeed, and they embraced it. With the Sikh tradition and other Indian traditions are similar, but particularly with the Sikh tradition, the belief in fighting for a just cause, as you say, with belief in God and Guru, and the message of the Guru, which Sikhs, it forms a part of the Sikh national anthem. The last stanza of that national anthem says, "And when my end comes, when my end comes, may I die fighting in battle." They were living up to that reputation and that standard in thinking, well, if we're involved in a just cause, fighting for a righteous side, and we happen to die, then my place in heaven is secured because I'm doing this out of full faith in what I believe.
Now, there's an irony to this, because if you heard somebody say that now, we would regard them as a religious fanatic. Absolutely. And the chances are they might actually find themselves under surveillance by the police, because the statement it makes us feel uncomfortable given what is happening in the world now. And yet go back 100 years, it seems that the British military authorities exploited that. They felt that they could use it for the good in the campaign.
It's interesting, the whole idea of a just war, a holy war, or a jihad, or fighting for in the name of God, and the connotations that brings up today absolutely is quite controversial and would indeed cause concern to anyone hearing that. But remarkably, the British embraced this concept of the martial traditions, not just with the Sikhs, but other faiths as well, including Muslim faiths. Punjabi Muslims were recruited as well quite heavily out of the Punjab to fight in the conflict. And the British certainly saw it as an asset, particularly with the Western Front, where the British were relying heavily on Commonwealth soldiers to put them into the defences in France and Flanders when they were still mobilising their reserves. The need for Indians was remarkable and had a tremendous impact in France and Flanders. But certainly when we look at other campaigns in Mesopotamia, German, East Africa, those other campaigns, Commonwealth Indian soldiers were used heavily. And the British recognised that certainly having soldiers who had earned a fierce reputation fighting on the northwest frontier, the border with Afghanistan, and putting them into places like modern-day Iraq, they were acclimatised to the environment and they could fight in those harsh, horrific, desert-like conditions. And of course, 100 years later, we're still talking about that. Exactly.
Incredible déjà vu. When the survivors actually returned home, how were they treated? Were they seen as conquering heroes?
It's a curious one, because for a lot of Indians generally, the war represented an adventure. Back in 1914, the stories of Sikh bravery or Punjabi bravery, if you want to widen that out to other faiths in Punjab, was still quite common. So these, I almost think of it as the Wild West, and that whole kind of adventurous nature that a lot of these soldiers had. That kind of spurred them on to fight. For a lot of them as well, it was a stable source of income, particularly for their families as well. One of the reasons why these soldiers were so diehard in battle was that they knew that if they happened to have perished, if they died, their families would still receive a pension, so their families would be looked after. So certainly there was a sense of adventure, there was a sense of wanting to make an income. A lot of them, with their bravery, bravado, gained medals, and certainly for those heroes going back with their medals, having proven themselves worthy of fighting as warriors, as a warrior class, not just Sikhs, but Hindus and Punjabi Muslims as well, was very important to them. And certainly those stories that they then passed on had an effect, and we see that effect with the number of Indians who then went on to fight, fighting in the Second World War, so that it does have a correlation.
Now, you are launching this campaign to erect this permanent memorial. Tell us what progress you're making on that, and more importantly, once you've got the funds together, how will this memorial look, and where's it going to be?
As part of our legacy efforts with the Sikhs At War project, we decided to look at a permanent memorial across the UK. There is no national memorial that pays tribute to Sikh soldiers who fought during World War I. Certainly there is a need for it and a desire within the community as well. But rather than doing anything locally, we wanted something of a national scale, of a national level, with that level of importance as well. And as I said, something that we can galvanise Indians across the board as well as non-Indians to come to a national event. So we'll be looking to launch the World War I Sikh Memorial Fund within the next week. That will raise funds for a permanent memorial which will be put up at the National Memorial Arboretum, the centre of remembrance in the UK, and that's got the backing of serving British Armed Forces personnel.
OK, Jay, we look forward to that. So obviously come back when you're ready to launch it, and we look forward to seeing the designs as well.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.